I wrote a song called Kingdoms of Corruption that I would like to dedicate to the people across the globe as they wage their peaceful struggle to try to force the powers that be to treat them with dignity, respect, integrity, and honesty. Good luck in your struggle to have a true democracy that is of the people, for the people, and by the people, and respects all citizens' rights to freedom of speech and the rule of law. The kingdoms of corruption, one by one they fall. Kingdoms of corruption, the biggest one of all, is hiding right in front of us for all the world to see. Kingdoms of corruption in the land that they call free. Voices of the many, spoken but not heard. They have their fancy lawyers to rearrange the words. They don't seem to hear us as our backs against the wall. They don't seem to hear us in our desperation call. Some want to shoot the messenger for showing what he saw. Instead of looking at the evil, they should be appalled. Jesus had a message, this can't be denied. There's plenty here for all the world, and I hope for all mankind. The kingdoms of corruption, one by one they fall. Kingdoms of corruption, biggest one of all, is hiding right in front of us for all the world to see. Kingdoms of corruption in the land that they call free. Hiding right in front of us for all the world to see. Kingdoms of corruption in the land they call free.
Now we'll move to something a little lighter. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a conservative GOP chair in our county? Wouldn't you like that?
Yeah.
Well, Orange County has one, and he's here tonight to talk to us. David Covey.
Well, thank you all. It's a pleasure to come over here and to visit with some of our neighbors from Orange County. For those of you who don't know, we're right on the other side of Beaumont and go all the way to Louisiana. Heard someone said that Orange is where the men are men and the women are too. And now you understand why we're not friends anymore. And so we had to straighten him out a little bit. But I'm here with my sister Susanna, and she's the smart, talented one in the family, got all the good looks. And so I bring her around whenever I can. And I'm glad to be here. Orange County was like you folks, we were hit pretty hard by the hurricane. And although our family was okay, most of our neighbors flooded, had many friends, and most of the folks in our community did. And it was just the water kept coming and coming. And I tell you what, that Tuesday night, it was just a little spooky when we looked out and saw the water coming up to places it had never been, and the water just kept coming down hard. And but Lord's good; He gets us through those times, and we keep on going. So, what I would like to talk to you tonight about is some of the things that we're looking at doing in Orange County, and kind of give you maybe a little bit of vision for what you could have. But first I want to give you maybe just a little introduction of who I am and how it is that I've come to be the chairman of our Orange County GOP. And so my involvement started back when I was a kid, and there he is. You know, I feel like I know a lot of people here. Joe over here, he knows the news, who were in my parents' wedding. We got Josh is an Orange County guy. I got Art over here. I got a lot of I see familiar faces all through here. Anyway, you know, I started out. My family was involved in politics, and as far as we knew, being involved included voting, and then we would watch the returns of the presidential election. So we'd usually get some ice cream and sit there on whatever night it was and watch the returns come in. A couple of times it was really worth, you know, when Bush won and the hanging chads, it really got interesting. Other nights we were finished by 8 and we hadn't even finished the ice cream yet. So, but we thought that was being involved in government. And what we've come to find is that it takes more. It takes an investment. It takes sacrifices to make a difference in our government. And really, freedom is worth it. Freedom not just for us, but we have to look to the freedom for our children and those that are coming after us. So I grew up in a family that was involved. I did end up working on a campaign for our county commissioner, and ended up that he won, and he was the first Republican to be elected in a statewide or county election almost since the war between the states, and so we got him elected, and it began to turn the tide in Orange County. After that, I was hired by Congressman Stockman. And came on as his district staff to work as Veteran Affairs and help the veterans in our district get the care that they needed and get in the hospital, and enjoyed that and learned what it means to work in the federal government and kind of what happens there. And I can tell you it's not all good. After that, I did go and get my law degree and was hired by the Texas Senate to work for a real patriot, Bob Hall, who is, to me, a great champion of all conservatives, a very stout Christian, and just a good legislator. And had the honor to be his senior policy advisor during his first term in office there. And so after that, came back and was greatly involved in our county and began to see some things change. We won a few more elections. And I began to see some problems in the Republican Party, some problems that I didn't like. In some ways, how they embraced candidates who were not genuine. And it became evident that we were so wrapped up in winning as a team that we didn't care the quality of our candidates. And we lost the messaging and the genuineness of our party because all we cared about was winning. And so as I got more involved, I realized that, you know, keeping Texas red is a very sorry slogan because it's not about the color, it's not about the party, it's about the character of the candidate running. And so our county chair in Orange County, resigned to take care of some family matters. And the executive committee appointed me to fill her place, or voted me in. And so I'm finishing out her term, and we'll be running then again for election in Orange County coming up in the primary. But one of my goals, as I've become more and more involved, is to not be as event-driven as we are issue-driven. And we want to begin to pass resolutions, like you've passed, that tell the elected officials who are straying off track that we don't have confidence in you. We don't trust you. And in fact, folks like Joe Straus need to be on notice that we're kicking them out. And our state representatives need to know that our parties are not going to support them if they vote for him. So I think that resolutions like that are very helpful. I presided over one meeting in Orange County, and then we had a hurricane, and so we're hoping to pass that coming up and join all of you over here in the fight to get rid of those folks who are really obstructing conservative agendas. And so that's kind of how that came about. You know, if you look in the news and you follow the headlines, there's a lot going on. A lot of what we see is about North Korea. And the news lately, of course, has been hurricanes. And then movies come out. There's a lot that goes on the national level. And there's a lot of attention that's kept up over here by the media and the left. But meanwhile, over here is where things are really happening. Over here, kind of under the radar, are the things they hope you don't notice, the priorities. And so we have to learn to cut through the tape, the red tape, cut through the things that block our view and look to see what are our elected officials doing. Now, I think that what parties should be doing is not only passing resolutions that say what we want our elected officials to do, but then we need to score them. We need to get back to our people and say, did they listen to us? Because a lot of parties will tell what they want you to do, but then we don't follow up and hold our representative accountable and see whether they actually followed through. And so we've got to do that. We've got to do that. Now let me ask you, if there's one office in politics that everyone pays attention to and it takes the most time, what office would you say that is? Probably the president. The president. Everybody's watching the president. But did you know that the president doesn't impact you the most? In fact, the president has little to do with your day in and day out. It's your school boards, it's your water districts, it's your county commissioners. Those are the things that impact you the most. It's the local. Now, it's important who's the president, obviously. But let me ask you this. Who do you think has more influence with the president? You or your congressman? Probably your congressman. That's a good. Your congressman represents roughly 850,000 people. And so he has a little more influence than you probably do. Now let me ask you this. You have a state senator. Who do you think has more influence with your state senator? You or your state representative?
State rep.
Probably your state rep. Now your state senator usually represents between 800,000 and 1 million people, similar to a congressman. And your state rep will typically represent around 225,000 people. And so anywhere from that all the way down to 100,000. So your state rep is a little more accessible, okay, than your senator, a little more accessible than your congressman, and probably has a little more weight with them than you do because he's known by them. Now, let me ask you this. Who do you think has more influence with your state representative? You or your county judge?
Judge.
Probably your county judge. They pay attention. They meet with the judges. Matters who your judge is, doesn't it? What about this? Who do you think has more influence with your judge? You or your county commissioner?
Commissioner.
Your commissioner. Your commissioner's there. They have a little more weight. And what I want to hope you're seeing is you have more influence with the local races. Local matters. If we can get our justices of the peace, look, if we can get our school boards, our water districts, if we can get control of the local, it will have a ripple up effect. So if you're in a pond and you want to make a big splash and have a ripple that reaches all the way across, you start where you are and you make as big a splash as you can and the ripples go further out. If we want to have an impact as conservatives in Texas moving forward, it's not going to be by a top-down approach. It's going to be by a bottom-up. We have to start as local as we can. That's why I wrote the book, Hometown Politics. And in it, I go through all the local offices and tell how they work and how you can impact your county through local government. But I also explain the Republican convention, how precincts, state, and conventions work. And so we have to start local. And that's what a lot of people miss. They think that we got to get the right congressman. They think we got to get the right president, and that'll fix all of our worries. But that's just the beginning. We have to start local. Now, why is government important? James Madison, he said, if men were angels, we'd need no government. And if governments were angels, we'd need no elections. And that's true. We need government because we're not angels. And what I want to show you tonight is that we have government as part of a jurisdiction which is set up by God. Now, government doesn't just mean civil government, okay? Government applies to church government, there's family government, there's self-government, that is the self-restraint which we have, and then there's civil government, okay? But our rights don't come from civil government, right? That's why it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident. And that our rights are inalienable rights from who? From God. You see, unless our rights are from God, they're not inalienable. Unless our rights are from God, then they're just from the government. And if the government gives us rights, then isn't it logical that the government can change those rights, can take them away, can adjust them if they choose to? And so we have to start with the basis that laws and government and our rights come from God. That's why George Washington said of religion and morality that in vain would that man claim what? Patriotism, who tries to subvert these great pillars. You have to have religion and morality. And to me that means coming through God and through the God of the Bible. And so that has to be our starting point. If there aren't absolutes, if there's not right and wrong, then it's only what the majority says. So we have to start at that point, and then from there, we can get a good and righteous government if we govern on that basis. I want to talk to you a little bit about how to have an impact in legislation. Here in Texas, we have a majority of Republicans. Would you believe that? If you just looked at the facts, would you believe we have a majority of Republicans? It's kind of doubtful. The things that we're passing, it's kind of doubtful. You know, George Orwell said, we have sunk to a depth at which the restatement of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men. We have to state the obvious. And the obvious is that Republicans are not cutting it. They have not done what they said they would do. That goes for the Congress. That goes for our state legislature. And we saw that very clear this past session. They promised a whole lot of things, including in the special session, and they simply did not deliver. And so what my job as a chair of a party, a county party, is to hold our elected officials accountable to do what the platform says. You know, we actually got a pretty good platform. I don't know if you've read it. It takes about an hour and a half to read through. There's some pretty good planks in there. There's some stuff that's decent. I mean, people have worked hard on there. If we could only get them to follow it, then we'd be in a pretty good spot. But they don't want to follow it. And so we have to wonder, why are Republicans doing this? Why are they not following what they said they would do? Why are they twisting and then trying to? It's like they get elected by conservatives, and then they want to prove to some intellectual leftist that they're reasonable people. And so they leave the very roots that got them elected. And so what we have to do is, if we're going to make a difference in legislation, we can't trust our elected officials to pass legislation. We're going to have to pass it ourselves. So there are three things. There are three things to passing good legislation. And this is going to impact the future of Texas politics, in my opinion. You say, we're not going to do it by simply electing the right person and then being hands-off. We have to get involved. We have to get our hands dirty. We have to make the investment and the sacrifices if we're going to change the direction of Texas. And I will take questions here in a little bit. But the three things you need to pass good legislation, and the first one are relationships. We have to have relationships both at the grass level roots, at a grass level, and also in our legislature. So it's easy, and Pat and I were talking about this, it's easy to blow up, and it's easy to break the relationships that we have with people because they do wrong. We have to restrain, okay? I was staff for Bob Hall, and one of the things that we noticed with other offices, and we try not to do it with ours, was that when people come in and explode and are incredibly ugly, you do what? You shut them off. You don't see them. So we've got to, as conservatives, we've got to keep those relationships so that we can build. Now, there's some that are beyond repair. There's some folks like Joe Straus and Byron Cook that you're not going to be able to work with no matter what. And those people we work hard to throw out as fast as we can, okay? But the people that we can work with, we have to keep open relationships if we want to make a difference and pass conservative legislation. The second thing we need is preparation. So we need relationships. Second, we also need preparation. Now, as conservatives, we have the right positions. We have the right answers. But what I found is that sometimes, because we know we have the truth, we're a little bit lazy in preparing and bringing our positions to our state legislators. And so we need to do the research. We need to go and research what our issue is. So say you're a windstorm inspection engineer. And let's say, for instance, that you have to do 100 hours of continuing education. And you realize that other states only require 25 hours. And so you want to pass a bill that cuts your continuing education per year down to what is reasonable to other states. You need to prepare and have your research ready. You need to look at other state laws. We can look at what other states are doing. We can research it. And we can talk to people. We can have numbers and statistics. Because here's what I know. Elected officials are going to always be lazier than we are. Okay? They're not going to go do the work that we want them to. We have to do it for them. And so that's unfortunate. But if we want to pass things, we can do that. And I'll tell you, the left is very motivated at putting together their position. They're very motivated at giving the facts that are necessary for their team members, even if they are Republicans, to advance their cause. And so we need to be just as diligent and just as passionate about advancing our cause. So we need relationships. We also need preparation. And third, we need a one-pager. Does anybody know what a one-pager is? It's one page that states what your facts and what your bill does. Now, can a one-pager be a front and a back page? That's 2 pages. Can you have 2 pages and still be a one-pager? No. 1 page. Now, I'm very adamant about this because I've seen it over and over and over again. As staff, we have time to read 1 page. And when you go around to offices, especially at the Capitol, and you give someone a book this thick, all the information you have, they're not going to read it. You know where it gets filed? In the trash cans. That's where big files get filed. So you have to have a one-pager, something that the staff can read and retain, and then they can pass it on to the member. That's the reality which we live in. And so if you're going to pass good legislation, you need to boil it down. If you can't boil your issue down to a one-pager, then you probably have bitten off a little too much. You need to break it up, take it in bite-sized pieces, and then you'll be able to move forward. So what are the three things that you need to pass conservative legislation moving forward to impact Texas? You need relationships, because you can't do without the relationships, unfortunately. You need preparation, and we have the truth, so we just need to go out and get our numbers put together. And then you need a what? A one-pager. And you can pass legislation. By doing this, we don't have to rely then on our state legislators to do everything. Because the fact is, they won't. We've been relying on them. It's time to stop relying on legislators, state representatives, to push our agenda, because they won't. Now, that's going to mean that we have to go to the Capitol. That's probably going to mean that we have to spend the gas, drive over there, go door to door. But if we're smart about it, we go to the committee people. There's usually 7 elected officials on the committee. And we don't have to go to every person. We have to go to the right people. And we can pass legislation. We can make a difference. And I want you to know that even though we have a super majority of Republicans, they're not all our friends. Now, Mr. Toth, he's a friend. But they're not all our friends. We have to learn to be discerning. We have to ask the questions that are important. And we have to determine the character of the candidates, not just the rhetoric that they espouse. And I also want to tell you that one person can make a difference. I want to share a school story. Back in the 1750s, there was a farm boy there, and he grew up and he learned to live off the land, and he ultimately was married and had a child. And he started a business, and he lived in Virginia. And his business failed, not just the first time, but his second business failed, and then his third business failed. And he was down, and that would get most people down if your business has kept failing and you're struggling, you're married, you have a child to pay for. He ended up having to move back into his family home with his parents. He was out of work, and so he would go out every day and look for work. While he was doing that, he would go over to the courthouse for breaks and would listen to court cases. And he became fascinated with attorneys there. So this young man decided, I think I would like to become an attorney. And he began to study law, not like law today where they study cases and law is always a moving target. But he studied Blackstone, real law, and what's right and wrong. And back then you had to become an attorney, have 3 attorneys that would speak for you. And so after he had studied and was ready to be licensed as an attorney in Virginia, this young man went over and he met with George Whitten. I don't know if you're familiar with George Whitten. He's a great American jurisprudence. He was one of the first American scholars and professors of law in the States here. And George Whitten met with him and said, I don't think you're ready for this. And so, he was so discouraged. And so then he went on and studied more, and he met with John Randolph, and another great patriot. And John Randolph said, I think you would be an honor to your profession. And he spoke for him, and they got 2 other attorneys, and Patrick Henry became an attorney. And only 5 years later became a household name in America. Because he stood for principle. Because he never would give up. John Randolph told Patrick Henry when he was interviewing him, he said, don't take this wrong, but I'll never judge someone by their outward appearance again. And apparently Patrick Henry was kind of a country-looking fella. He wasn't real dressed up. And a lot of times leaders come from the places that we least expect them. Sometimes it's right under our nose. As conservatives, our ranks are sometimes thin, but we need to learn to use the talents that are right next to us. The talents in the people around us. We need to be able to recognize those and use those people. It's when we least expect it that great talent rises up. Funny thing about Patrick Henry was he wrote 7 resolutions, and he put them up in the Virginia House, trying to lead the way to leave Great Britain. And the Loyalists and the colonists, the Patriots, both had their own newspapers. Well, only 5 of the resolutions passed actually in Virginia, and the 5th one was rescinded the next day. But the Patriot newspaper printed all 7 of his resolutions, in which he calls out Great Britain and in some pretty strong language. And because the papers didn't have great communication, they went from one paper to the next paper all around the 13 colonies, and before long, all of the colonies thought that these 7 had been passed by Virginia, and that they were basically leaving Great Britain, and that sparked what became the American Revolution. And Thomas Jefferson said that Patrick Henry is foremost among the founders. And so this one man, because of his boldness and his commitment to principle, made a difference. And I know you struggle here. This county has its problems with elected officials. And word is there's a little bit of corruption here and there. But one person can make a difference. And here in this room, you have a lot of people. You can fight shoulder to shoulder, and you can make a difference. That's our goal in Orange County. We're going at this from a bottom-up approach. We're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to weed out all the rottenness in the foundation, and we're going to throw out Republicans who are in name only, and we're going to get true conservatives, one position at a time. We're going to fill our precincts with precinct chairs who understand what it means to be conservative. And if you don't agree with the platform, we're not going to let you become a precinct chair. And then, if our elected officials do not support the platform, we're going to pass resolutions to censure them. We're going to pass resolutions to tell them how we feel. And then we're going to make it public, because so many of these parties, we forget to make it public and report. So I intend to have our state representative stand up on the stage, and while he's there, we're going to tell him, give him a grade. And we're going to tell him where we disagree. Politicians are not celebrities. We treat them like they're above us. They're supposed to be our servants. They're supposed to work for us, and they forget that. But we have to remind them of that. And we need to quit taking selfies with them and acting like they're some prince, and show them that they work for us. And the ones that do a good job, we show appreciation to. The ones that are true fighters, we support and we back. And the ones that don't, we throw out. It's that simple. It's not about keeping Texas red. It's about keeping freedom, no matter what the color is. So with that, I'd like to take any questions if we have another 5 minutes or so. I don't want to rush. Okay. Yes, sir.
The previous Orange County chairman was a lady, you said. How long had she occupied that position?
She had been chair for approximately 4 years.
Second question, you were appointed to fill her position. Let's pretend that she had been there many years.
Like 50 Jews?
I think you know where I'm going. So, what would you have done to run against her in the election?
It comes down to your strategy of having precinct chairs. It really does. People from around the county who will fill those positions. Now, I've heard of some counties that won't fill precinct chair positions. They'll leave them empty rather than filled in with someone who would oppose the chair. So that's taking corruption to a new level.
And is that legal in the system to do?
It's unethical.
But can't you run for precinct chair anyways, so that you can get elected even if you're not?
You can. You've got to enforce it with the chair. I mean, chairs have a lot of discretion, and if you're not willing to fight the chair, then a lot of times they get the way. So, but I would say, yeah, precinct chairs, you have to go after those, and again, it's a bottom-up approach. It takes commitment, it takes resources, but if you win a few precinct chairs and they see that you're coming after them, tell you what, the other precinct chairs start getting real reasonable. Yes, sir.
So question, if someone were to run for an unfilled precinct chair seat, you know, and they were elected, say it was, they were the only person running for it, unopposed.
Unopposed, they should, yeah.
Would the county chair validate that election? Would that?
They're supposed to.
But they don't have to.
They don't have to.
That's what I thought.
That's the discretion of the chair and the executive committee.
And how does the commissioner's court have control over what the electorate says? In other words, if precinct chair is elected, the way I understand it is that then it's presented to the, what's her name, the lady that handles the elections? Yeah, that's Wally has to okay it and give it to her, even though I was elected. He has to give it to her, and then she presents it to the commissioner's court, and they can accept it or not accept it.
The commissioner's court should not have anything to do with a precinct chair. That would be strictly a party position. So there should be no connection to that, and the commissioner should have no influence on that.
He was probably referring more to an election judge position than a precinct chair.
Okay, an election judge at a polling position, I'm not sure that they're certified by the county commissioner. I think I think the parties, my understanding, I've only been chair for a few 2 months. So, but we're going through the election training. My understanding is that especially for the primaries, the parties run the elections.
I have been involved from the very bottom of the Republican Party or our system of government to all the way to the Governor Abbott's office. And I have noticed that when the individual goes before and has a complaint, mine was in a guardianship matter when my mother was human trafficked in guardianship. And I found the problem to be that not only do the local county commissioners, but also the judges and the attorneys and the House of Representatives and all the Office of Court Administrators all are involved in this, I call it racketeering that we have here in Texas, but all throughout our other states as well. What can we do as citizens to bust up this cartel?
I have a great chapter in my book on that.
Just okay.
Hometown politics, wrote some stuff on that. You have to start at the bottom. And the beauty of the situation of corruption in government is that all of those elected officials who are corrupt are out to better themselves. And so one of their weaknesses is that they'll stab each other in the back just to protect themselves. Conservatives won't do that. We work together, we're on a team, but those guys will do that. And so you have to put pressure on them to realize that if you're going to support a corrupt judge, for example, then we're going to come after you next. And one of the problems in the conservative movement is that we are very disorganized in how we approach fighting elections. So we say if we have a bad judge and 4 bad commissioners, we try to fight them all in the same year. And what I would suggest to you that strategically, we would be better off using our resources to target the weak members on that court and get allies on there and then move down the line. Instead of fighting all around us, let's pick a target and let's go after that one target, and it puts the others on notice that we're watching, and then we can make a difference. I'll give you an example. I worked on the campaign for Rick Green, who ran for Supreme Court. And Rick Green lost by just a few votes. It was very minimal. And but while he was running, the other Green, it was Paul Green, had several cases before him in the Supreme Court, and the fact that Rick was running against him pulled him to the right. So that just the fact that he had a challenger who was so strong and came so close pulled him to the right. As you can target a commissioner, and they know that you're coming after them with everything you have, it's going to help pull them and the entire court back to the right. I don't know if that answers your question, but we got to be strategic and not try to fight on every front, in my opinion.
Who is your state rep and state senator?
Yes, sir. I have as a state rep Dave Phelan, and as a state senator Robert Nichols.
Real
That's why we have a lot of work.
Real conservative.
You think so in the commercials? Yeah. And I'm getting the. Okay. Well, we'll take one more question. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think that the citizens are not more involved? And how can you get them more involved?
A lot of people have given up because they don't think they matter. They don't think that their vote counts, and they think that the government's so corrupt that they're not going to listen to it. In fact, I should share these numbers with you. It really does matter. And what we have to show people is that just a few can make a difference. I think that's what we have to say. We have to show them that it only takes a few. It really does. I'll give you an example. My boss, Senator Bob Hall, former boss, when he was running, he ran everything he had. He was way outspent, and he won by 300 votes out of, you got a district of roughly 850,000 people, and the vote comes down to 300. I mean, if a number of people will get their family and friends out, it makes a difference. But a few other ones, as recent as 2016, I don't know if you're familiar with Patricia Grady, who won over Brett Griffin for district judge in the 212th district, and won by 374 votes. 374. In 2012, the Republican primary runoff, Kyle won over Tucker Anderson by 146 votes in House District 12. That same year, in the Democrat primary, Rod Paton won over Frank Brown by 81 votes. 81 votes.
Do you have the total votes?
I don't have the total there. I can get those for you, though, and on the Secretary of State's website. In 2010, his bid for state representative, Jack O'Connor, won his primary runoff over Diana Williams by 61 votes. 61 votes. And then Scott Cosper beat Austin Ruiz for state representative District 54 by exactly 40 votes. 40 votes. That's not much. I mean, we can get 40 votes. And then Tim Wesley won over Reuben for U.S. representative in District 15 by 20. This is a congressional seat by 29 votes. A member of Congress chosen by 29 vote difference. Woo! Yes, ma'am.
question is kind of attached. How can we get more Christians out of it?
That's a good one.
Because of all the Christians, only 50% of evangelicals are registered. Only 25% of them are Christians. So how can we get more of them voting?
So, one thing that my sisters have done is they've become voter registrars, where they go around and we go to churches and register people to vote. And so right there at the church, it makes it as easy as possible. Remember, people are lazy, politicians are lazier, so make it as easy as you can so that they can register to vote. The last one I got to mention is Briscoe Kane, won by 23 votes. If 12 people had voted the other way, you wouldn't have Briscoe Kane lost. 12 people made a difference.
It's so discouraging though, because sometimes we'll be at the voting booths and it, over here in the Woodlands, and at that location, there are, so other events go on there at the same time as voting occurs. And there are people literally that get out of the cars to say, you know what, I don't vote. I'm here to do something else. And, you know, it's.
And they've got a Christian bumper sticker on the back of their car.
Right. They've got a
We've got there's a couple ministries that are targeting pastors right now, and right now we have an absence in the pulpit of pastors who will address this issue. Some out of fear, a lot out of ignorance. It's kind of shameful, but pastors have to see the difference. They have to see the value. You know, we think that government doesn't affect us, or that it's not coming after us, and so we want to say, okay, we put church over here, and government, they can do their thing. But for me, I was homeschooled, and if the people before me back in the '80s had stayed out of the public arena, I wouldn't have the right to homeschool now. And if we're not fighting for liberty today, then our children 20, 30 years from now won't have liberties that we have. So just because it might not affect us, we have to show Christians this is going to affect those that come after you. And I mean, I don't know, other than educating them, showing them how this is impacting you, I don't know how you get people motivated. It's very challenging. Other than make it as simple as you can, make up your own voter recommendation cards and give it out at church. You know, a lot of people aren't going to go take the time to look up who to vote for, so they won't vote. But if you'll make up your own card and pass it out and think, well, okay, I know who to go vote for now, then you can sometimes expand your influence by doing that.
Can I add to that?
Yes, sir.
I think, I've thought a lot about this question. I think part of the answer is what you just said. People don't really know who to vote for. And they don't want to vote for the wrong person. They don't really know how to find out who is accurately representing themselves and who is a rhino. And so they choose not to participate. More out of frustration and lack of, not sure. But
I'll give you an example. My former boss, Bob Hall, ran against Bob Gould. And if you looked at their little push cards that they gave out and they mailed, they would say the same thing. We're all pro-life, right? We all want less taxes. We all want to shrink the government. And so to your point, people read that and they look the same. They look the same. The fakes look just like the genuine. So how do you know? You gotta dig deeper. You gotta dig deeper. You gotta have people like Pat, right? Those in this room that you can trust, that when they do the work and they give recommendations that people know they can count on. But if they're not willing to dig deeper, it's hard to tell. And so, but also, once you get involved, I'll tell you this, and you start working with them, it becomes clear pretty fast who the genuines are. Yes, ma'am.
Well, years ago, over 20 years ago, I was chairman of Christian Coalition here in Cameron County. And then in 2008, we started an Eagle Forum chapter. We Christian Coalition to be reformed. And I have spent over 20 years trying to figure out the answer to that question. How do you get more Christians out to vote? And I kind of come to the conclusion, after talking to people for a long time, trying some things, trying other things. I mean, we used to take tons of newspaper-like voter guides, Christian Coalition voter guides, to churches. I mean, we've done like 25,000 voter guides right here in Montgomery County. People like voter guides, that it helps them make their own decisions. There are new websites like iVoter Guide, but that comes out really late. It comes out so late that it's almost worthless. One thing that this organization does, which I really, really like, is that they vet the candidates, they video the interviews, you can go online, you can send out the email link to your friends and family members, friends in your church, your Sunday school class. Get the email addresses to your friends in your Sunday school class. I mean, if we do this on a grassroots level, it can happen. But you have to do it, you have to be methodical, you have to, and most people are open to information from their friends and family. I mean, they're really close friends and family members. I think that's helpful. Christians want to know who they can trust too for endorsements. And when I send out, and I do a whole lot of research on my own, and I go to these meetings, but I'm also president of the Eagle Forum. I go to a number of meetings. I listen to candidates. But I listen to recommendations. I ask questions from people I trust. And especially on statewide level, because I cannot know everybody on that ballot personally, you know. So we're all dependent on recommendations. And that's what I like to call it. When I send out my recommendations, I call them recommendations.
And I'll bet that if you've been doing this for a while, you have people now who contact you and say, hey, have you put out your recommendations yet?
Every election, I have new people
That's
say,
right.
would you please add me to your list?
If we do this consistently as individuals, you become known in your church, for better or for worse, as the government guy or the government, junkie there. And so, if you do that consistently, it'll start coming to you and you'll be expanding
I mean,
your spirit of
I'm
influence.
just one person.
You know, and we're only
but
responsible.
We can all do a
That's
little of
right.
that.
We can all do
We
it.
can all do a little of that.
And we're only responsible for our sphere of influence. So we don't have to bear the weight of the whole failure of the government on us. We're responsible for that around us. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, I worked on several campaigns, and it's usually data, like what they're getting at is data is what wins. That's why the establishment beats us every time, or most of the time. Because they have the money and the resources for that data, but a lot of that stuff you can go out and do yourself. Like he's talking about collecting email addresses. These guys have text software that sends out a text telling you to vote. There's internet, there's all kinds of different tools that really organized professional candidates use. But like he's saying also, candidates, politicians are lazy. And probably 3/4 of the politicians up in their campaigns, they won't block one. They won't make phone calls. They won't raise money. And then they expect, well, I'm the good guy, you should vote for me. No, if I don't know who you are, I'm not voting for you. If you're not willing to do the work, what makes me think that you're gonna go do the work for me in Austin or DC or on County Commissioner's Court? You're gonna settle into the establishment, be lazy, and go with the flow. So data is key. You can't get everybody to vote, and you have to work and operate within your universe of voters. That's the key. Yes, you always should be trying to register voters, but you can register 3,000 voters, and the reality is 100 are going to vote, or 200 are going to vote. So it's all about getting out the vote. You know, whoever has the most runs at the end of the ball game is going to win. So you need to focus. Don't go stand out for Walmart and hand out push cards to everybody. You're wasting your time and your money. Go to every registered Republican voter, especially first and foremost those who voted in the last 3 Republican primaries. Otherwise, you're just stupid. You cannot go after people that are not going to do what you want them to do. You have to start with your base, and then you can chase after those other folks if you have time.
One other thing too, is I've been a deputy registrar, and I've done the church thing, and when you're a deputy registrar, you have to do it right, you have to do it ethically, okay? And you have to make sure, I mean, there are rules, and I'm not gonna go into that, but, I don't like to offer voter registration cards everywhere.
That's right. Amen.
And so I'm not a deputy registrar anymore. And I chat with people, I'm a precinct chair, if I go door to door and talk to people, it doesn't take me but a couple of sentences to engage them where they stand politically. You can tell by their body language and all kinds of things. I don't offer voter registration. They're not conservative. I say, well, it is certainly nice to meet you, and I'm gonna go run down the street and get to know the rest of the neighbors, and God bless you, and I do that, at church too. But if you're a deputy registrar, you have to do
And I can understand that.
there are rules that you have to follow.
That's right. But in the big picture, in the big scheme, I still think the more people that are involved, the better off they're going to be. And so we have to push, But Josh makes a good point. We have limited resources. We have to be smart as conservatives. We have to use those resources on the people that vote. I would recommend that you go to your, I guess you have an election clerk. And I do this for our county for the last 10 years now. I've been collecting who votes. And so I have their address, and I know who votes. And that's information they give you where you can buy for pennies, $20, $30, you can get it. So make your own collection. Become the master and data holder in your area, your precinct, your county.